Students, for the students online, Assalamu alaikum and welcome. So we are just doing a short and brief recap of some of the things we talked about. So at the end of the day, no one truly understands fully what the intention is. But the majority of scholars, pretty much more than 90% of the ulama, agree that the intention certainly starts and begins in the heart. It resides in the heart. But what exactly should happen that causes you to act and perform in a certain way? What is that trigger? The ulama, they differ. Some of them say it starts with the intention, but then once ikhlas is ignited, which ikhlas is a sister topic to the intention, but that will come a little bit later. We have one particular hadith, inshallah, that we will go into detail to understand what ikhlas is and its relationship with intention. Okay, so there is an overlap between the two. But just for our sake, for our discussion, at the end of the day, the intention certainly was always and forever linked with your and my actions. And one other hadith that many of you know, I'm sure all of you know, our Prophet ﷺ said, what about the heart? Ala wa inna fil jasati mudgha. Like, isn't it indeed that in the body there is a organ? إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله. If it is pure, then everything pertaining to your movements and your actions are also going to be pure. That hadith, if you stop there, explains everything. The Prophet ﷺ in that hadith does not make any exception. He doesn't say, well, with the exception of this case, or if you're thinking about this, or if you're feeling this, or is it possible then? So here's my next question to you. Is it possible to have an intention to do one thing and it manifests into a completely opposite action? So you have an intention to do a good thing, but your actions are all the opposite. Is that possible? So how is that action then linked to this good intention if the action in itself was wrong? Okay, so you have the heart, and then you also have the nafs that tempts you and encourages you to do wrong as well. Okay, I need something more direct. How is it possible we just said that the intention is always linked to the action, but it's also possible that the intention can go one way and the action comes out the other way? So that means that first and foremost, there is no link now between the two. Now you have two opposites. What we also learn about the intention is that it is possible, it is very possible and very common for someone to have a good intention and follow through by doing all of the wrong things. So, for example, and by the way, there are millions of examples. Every one of you here can give a dozen. Tell me a random example. It doesn't have to be an Islamic one, where somebody has a good intention, but they went on a path that was wrong and haram to fulfill that intention. Tell me. Think of business, think of making money. I have an intention to sell a product or do business in a halal way. But I just can't help. I got this new account. It's a bit haram, some of the stuff they're asking me to sell. But my intention is only for Allah. Does that make sense? Because one intention is clear. But you see what it manifests into? Something completely the opposite. So another point that scholars talk about is that you can have two opposites. That also highlights for us that we do not have control over our intentions. You can ignite, you can attempt to feel and understand and reflect. No human being has full and complete control over their intentions fully. You may have control over certain aspects of your life, certain aspects of things that influence your intentions. So your environment, you can control that. You want to be in an environment that brings you closer to Allah. So you can control that. And as a result, your intention starts to develop the habit of being amongst this surrounding, always being reminded of Allah. But the moment you step out of this element, you feel it here. It's not just looking around and be like, my goodness, look at this place. No, you feel it here. So it is possible that, and very, very common, and it is also a general rule of thumb, nobody can fully control their intention and keep it on the right path. Another point, so those of you that are right now, these are just random scenarios that I have written down here that scholars have talked about. We don't need to go through them in detail, but we'll finish up this hadith and start the next one. Is that with respect to the intention, scholars have always till this day said and have written books of the struggle to maintain a sincere intention. We have scholars like Al-Imam al-Zuhri, who was a scholar of hadith that reached the level of Bukhari and beyond. He was an incredibly well-known scholar, and he makes a statement, I struggled to keep my intention on the right path for 25 years, and I still haven't figured it out. And there are statements like this of scholars all through in the past and even in the present. So there is an aspect of this that is above and beyond our control. Let me ask you one last question. Are you accountable for that? That your intention, you start to pray Maghrib and you're trying your best to focus. But then you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. What a long day. All of this is going on and it's replaying your entire day. Your intention was to just pray the Maghrib, and somewhere during that Maghrib, you just got lost. And it just became following the Imam. What is the ruling then? What happens there? Are you accountable first and foremost? You're accountable that when your intention without any control, without anything from you to ignite or to stir that up and add to it confusion, you didn't do anything. You just started feeling and your mind started wondering and you start daydreaming and then all of a sudden it's all over the place. You're accountable for that? It's both, okay? It's yes and no. You are only accountable for the things that is within your control and your power. And remember, we just said, we cannot control the intention in its entirety. There are certain elements of the intention. how you choose to start or how you maintain that intention, how you conclude, what it is that you do and how you live that helps to nurture a sincere intention, those are things you have control over. But at the end of the day, what do you do then? Tell me one way for all of us and those online. So then, what do you do to strive to maintain a sincere intention, not just in ibadat, but in life? What do we do? You have to constantly, very good. You have to constantly, and I say this because it is of no surprise that in my humble opinion and experience, most Muslims just don't pay attention to this. You must monitor this all the time, especially when you do things that are solely for Allah. When it's time for salah, when you're reading Quran, when you wake up for suhoor, when you go to the masjid, when you come to a janazah, when you have to focus and do something in the path of Allah, whatever it is, you have to daily, every single day, constantly struggle to maintain a sincere intention. Tell me very quickly some of the things that help us to do that. What are some things that help us to maintain a sincere intention? Just shout it out to me. So constant istighfar, and we'll generalize it, constant dhikr. Okay? Constant dhikr. And the best of it is istighfar. Okay? Tell me something else that helps to maintain a clear intention. Here's an important one, lifestyle. Your life and how you live determines what you feel and what you decide is serious and important and what isn't. We experience it every day. One person treats a certain thing incredibly serious, important, and the person beside them could care less. Is that true? Salah, for example, you look forward to it. You take this is like everything. This is your life to pray. And so you pray. But are there Muslims who make the choice not to pray? Just don't even care about it. Are there Muslims who do that? Yeah. So just keep that in mind, that at the end of the day, it is a fundamental duty on all Muslims to be constantly monitoring their intentions. Let's continue the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, in the last sentence of this hadith, will now just paint for you a picture of what this intention should look like. The intention for Allah as opposed to the intention for something else, whether it be something in the dunya or some sort of return, whatever the case is. So you have the rest of them. So the Prophet ﷺ then says, فَمَنْ كَانَ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, right? So whoever migrates, and their migration is for Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. Do you see that in your books? Right? Okay. What is the Prophet ﷺ really telling us in this example of the one who migrates for Allah and the Prophet? فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Then that migration is indeed for Allah and His Prophet. What is the Prophet ﷺ telling us in this sentence? He's giving us a practical example. Now, the subject in this example is hijrah. Everybody has heard this word before, correct? Hijrah has layers that are attached to it. You have the hijrah of the heart. So there's a spiritual type of hijrah. You have the actual physical hijrah where you literally and physically move from one spot to another. That's also a hijrah. You have a hijrah where you literally move from one spot to another, but there's only one purpose. It's only for Allah. That could be a separate hijrah. Hijrah has several layers to it. The one that's being highlighted in this hadith is a physical hijrah. So physically, the one who makes the decision to pack up and uproot themselves to another city or another country or another place, and the only reason they do that is to seek the pleasure of Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, then that hijrah will be counted for exactly what their intention was. In other words, they both are perfect. The intention is sincere for Allah, and the hijrah is sincere for Allah, so this works. Everybody understand? Let's just talk very quickly about the whole subject of hijrah, because it's usually, I wouldn't say a misunderstood topic, but it's usually a topic where many Muslims get carried away with. Okay, and the hijrah that I'm pointing to is the hijrah from one country to another and living in the balad or country of the kuffar, and living in the lands of the kuffar and having citizenship of the kuffar, and the list goes on. What do you guys think about that? What is the ruling for a Muslim to live in a kuffar society? Mhm. So, one very, very solid, popular opinion that, for the most part, is the most acceptable opinion is exactly what our sister mentioned, is that as long as you are not facing any restrictions to practice your deen, then wherever it is that you go, you're perfectly okay to live there. Okay, because you have no restrictions to be Muslim. Another opinion states no, it's not that easy. Because not only should you be able to practice your religion, however, you should also be able to share your religion and give da'wah wherever it is that you go. There are places in the world where if you mind your business, you're safe. But the moment you start preaching and teaching, then you'll get into problems. So other scholars, a second opinion is that these two conditions have to be there. There is another opinion as well with respect to the hijrah. Anybody have any thoughts what that could be? The another opinion is that it is completely haram, period. No Muslim should have the intention to migrate to any land where it is governed by a kuffar system, period. And this is actually a very, very common opinion. It is the strictest of all of the opinions on the subject of making hijrah. So I ask you this then, and as a matter of fact, there's even a more extreme opinion that states that the one who leaves a land of the Muslims or a land where they could practice Islam freely and goes to another land where the majority is the complete opposite and they have to, they have to live with some restrictions, but it's not crazy, then not only is the hijrah itself haram, but they are sinful for every second of their life living there. And none of their salawat and ibadat are accepted. Yeah, you can read this. You can read this stuff. So this subject of moving from one place to another is not a subject that is straightforward or common sense among scholars, right? So let's just get to the point. So what do you think is the opinion that is the one that we should remain with, that is a good opinion that scholars support, not just that fits our scenario? What do you think we should do here? Are we all sinful for being here right now? Say again? Okay. Mhm. So the hadith itself. Yeah. So at the end of the day, then, the freedom to practice your religion and find a better life. Once all of these things are in place, then khalas, keep your intention sincere and leave it at that. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. I understand. So at the end of the day, let's all be clear about the decision. I'm not going to just tell you what the correct opinion is and leave you with that. This opinion that I share with you has to be an opinion that validates our presence here in this land, okay? So we're not just going to pick what fits and then walk away. No, it has to make sense. And the answer to this question is all of the opinions we just mentioned, okay? All of them. They all have they are all relevant to a particular time and place. There are some countries where a stricter opinion may apply to them. There are others where all of them may apply to them, whatever the case is. It is as simple as choosing an opinion that scholars have studied that carry valid evidences. And once you have that, you are completely 100% okay. And just for the sake of argument, are we able to practice our religion freely? Yeah. I mean, it does come with its own struggles, but in terms of literally restricting you to be Muslim, Alhamdulillah, we don't have that problem. But we certainly have challenges to maintain that, correct? Okay. So let's just keep that as is, right? Because I don't want to spend too much time. A lot of the commentary on this subject really boils down to being in the Muslim land and supporting the Muslim land, et cetera, et cetera. If Medina, the blessed city of Medina, you were offered free citizenship to move there tomorrow, would you do that? Why not? So, thank you. Okay, I have a depends back there. Okay, tell me. So, mhm. Yeah. But I mean, you don't even have to go that far. Is it okay to want more than just the Islamic environment? Like, I like to have a beautiful home. I like to have beautiful flowers and trees in my backyard or whatever. I like to be able to take my family to a theme park or go and have fun at a playground. I want to do those things, but I want to do it, and at the same time, not have to compromise my deen in any way, shape, or form. So if you say yes, you want to go to Medina, Alhamdulillah, that's your choice. But those who say no, I'm perfectly fine where I am here in Toronto, are they wrong or potentially sinful for that? No. And I always tell students this: you can die right here, inshallah, as a good Muslim and attain Jannah. Okay, inshallah. For sure, the barakah, the blessings, and so on, and the path and reaping more rewards, etc. When you go to the lands like Mecca and Medina, absolutely. Like I've been offered to live in Medina several times. I was born in Medina. I don't know if some of you even know that. Like, I was born there. So I have the opportunity always available for me that I can relocate there. But I sincerely, after being in da'wah for so long, believe that there is more of a need for me to be here than to be there. Medina has mashayikh and scholars like you have never heard of in your. They're okay. They don't need this tiny miskeen old Musleh Khan to come and do so. No. But here now, you can bring a lot of good. You can help a lot of people. And so the reward and the barakah for somebody like us, this is where you want to be. You know, one of my professors, what he told us? He told us that any of you Western students plan to stay here in Medina, I want to honestly say that that decision is from the waswasa of shaitan. And he told us, he goes, you saved yourself. What about your friends and your neighbors? And if you let them drown, let them be lost and misguided, what'd you do all of this for? And drilled it into us. Yeah, nobody thought about relocating. Everybody went back home. Okay. Could somebody read me the last part of the hadith, please, in English? Yeah, just in English. The last part, let's finish that up and start the other one, inshallah. Anybody? وَمَنْ كَانَ هِجْرَتُهُ. The English only.
Does he whose migration was for Allah and His Messenger,
Yeah,
his migration was for Allah and His Messenger,
good.
and he whose migration was to achieve some worldly benefit or to take some woman in marriage, his migration was for that for which he migrated.
For which he migrated. Good. Everybody understand? So, in other words, he decided that he was going to migrate from one place to another because there was better opportunity, business, job, etc. That's what it means for dunya, or better housing, better infrastructure, etc., etc., etc. Everything dunya wise. Very quickly, is that allowed? Is that permissible? Is that haram? What do you guys think? Is it okay? Can I move to another country just because I want to live more comfortably? I like luxury. Can I do that?
No.
Okay, so let's add that to it. Is your deen compromised in any way that you love to live a luxurious life? Hmm? I want a big, beautiful home. I want all of the trimmings in my home painted in 24 karat gold paint. I'm allergic to Toyota or Honda. I just want a Ferrari, let's see, and I want to live this way. And I don't want it because I want to just show off and flex on Instagram and this. That's not what I want. I want it because I like it. But I'm a practicing Muslim. I study my deen, I pray, I do all of this, and I continue to better myself. But the part of me that lives in this world enjoys these comforts. Is that okay? The Prophet ﷺ, was he poor? Was the Prophet ﷺ poor, particularly in the Medini phase? Was he struggling? As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ, the the accomplishment of being now the leader and the governor of the entire city of Medina, had access to unlimited wealth. And back then, if you were able to gather 20 of your most pristine and prime camels that come from a particular breed, till this day, this is present. That if you go into the Arab world, you will still see a camel that costs $7 million US just for that one camel. The Prophet ﷺ had access to all this wealth. As a matter of fact, there are narrations of him gifting some of the companions X amount of camels, 5 or 6 camels, ordered that a ton of food and desserts like dates and barley and wheat and all of these things be given to members of his society. And he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had what you and I would refer to as a savings account. He actually put away barley, bread, and wheat stored in a sort of like a back house, like a storage house, sometimes for the entire year. So he saved, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he had access enough to save it. In our context today, it looks like, okay, he was really struggling. But back then, during that period, he was one of the richest and most powerful people at that time. And the reason why you don't see that when you read his seerah, you don't see this wealth, because he, alayhi salatu wasalam, made the decision that he was not going to use that wealth on himself. Do you understand? Do you see how easily you can fall into a completely opposite fiqh of the Prophet ﷺ? Most of you, when I ask you if he was poor, you said, yeah. You did it, and that's fine. That's why we're here. So we're going to take that yeah now and dissect it and really understand what is it that you're saying. So when you put it into context, you understand now that he, alayhi salatu wasalam, that's the lesson of you and I striving to live a simple life, is because the wealth that we do have, we don't keep it and hoard it. I have to drink from a 24 karat gold teacup every morning. You don't do that. You take that excess wealth and you do other things with it for the sake of Allah. Okay, so the ending of that hadith highlights that if somebody goes to another place for business, or they go to get married, which is very common these days. Somebody going, "Yeah, I'm going to go to England, and find me a husband, find me a wife. I'm going to go back home, they're, mashallah, in abundance." So, you know what I mean? So if you go and you make hijrah for that purpose, the whole idea at the end of that hadith is just to highlight that. One example, for Allah and His Prophet, that's what you're going to get. But the other example is all dunyawi, or for yourself, for your own benefit, and that's what the hijrah will be restricted to, the intention, okay? Let's move on to the next hadith. The next hadith is a big and comprehensive one, okay? The next hadith is truly, truly remarkable. So let's get right into this, okay? This particular hadith is the hadith of Umar radiallahu anhu. And before, let me just pull it up here as well. Okay. So this was narrated from Umar radiallahu anhu. And before we read through the hadith, I want you to just go to the English. I won't read the Arabic yet. And what we're going to do is just introduce the hadith and maybe take the first section of the hadith, because every paragraph of this particular narration is a lot to uncover. So if you go to the English, where it says on the authority of Umar radiallahu anhu, very beginning, my wording may be slightly different from yours, so don't worry about that. If you hear a word different here, don't worry about that. We're both reading the same hadith. My translation might vary. While we were one day sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, there appeared before us a man. Pause. The context of this hadith is said that this narration was mentioned when the Prophet ﷺ was nearing the end of his life. So write that down. Context or background, this was nearing the end of life for the Prophet ﷺ. We don't know an exact timeline. So it could be a few months before he passed, it could be a couple of years before he passed, but the point is, it was closer to the end of his life. And why was this hadith even narrated? Why is it being mentioned? So at least you have some background. Now here is the context. What was happening that this hadith needed to be mentioned? There was a sect that was gaining strength and growing in numbers, called the Qadariya sect, or the Qadariyya, which originally came from Iraq at that time. So it originated from Iraq. So this particular sect started to grow and started to gain momentum, and more people started to follow. What was the purpose of this? What was their theology? Their theology was that they denied qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They denied the concept of qadr itself. So what happened is that Umar, along with his son Abdullah ibn Umar, who is also one of the narrators of this hadith, they started to teach the other companions this hadith in order that it will eventually reach to those who are questioning the validity of the qadr of Allah, and so therefore they would be educated, right? We have similar scenarios till this day. Some of you, I'm sure you know this verse. Have you heard a verse like this where usually at the end of the khutbah, the Imam would recite a verse from Surah An-Nahl, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ يَعِظُكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. This ayah is one of the most recited ayah in the world today, especially with imams and leaders across the world. Both of the harams, till this day, when the imam and the khatib is about to conclude, he will recite the same ayah. That's not our subject, but the point is, where did that tradition come from? Does anybody know? Where did it come from to recite that verse of Surah An-Nahl at the end of every khutbah? It came during the leadership of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, okay, from the Umayyad dynasty. He was the one that started this because during his Khalifa period or his leadership, there was the same problem. There was a sect or a group of disbelievers that started to propagate awful things about Islam and about Muslims. And on the one hand, you try to ignore, but when you see that the bubble continues to grow bigger and bigger, now you have to do something about it. So this is what was happening. And he started to order all the masjids at that time and all the leaders and all the scholars and khatibs that you are ordered to recite this verse from Surah An-Nahl before or after your khutbah. Because that was the time where most of the people in the village and the cities, they would be present. So they tried to do that. And that tradition carried on till this day. It is one of the most comprehensive verses of the entire Quran. So my point here is this is not the only time something like this happened when there's a problem or there's a movement and we need to address it, okay? So when it's all said and done, here's a couple of things that I want you to write about the intro of this hadith. What is the nickname for Surah Al-Fatiha? It is called what? The mother of? Al-Kitab, right? The mother of the book, Al-Kitab. This hadith is called As-Sunnah, the mother of the Sunnah. Okay, so just like how Fatiha has that nickname, this hadith has As-Sunnah attached to it, okay? The next thing about this hadith is that it has only one theme. Everything you need to know about being a Muslim and practicing Islam is found in this hadith. So the central theme of this hadith is an introduction to the religion of Islam. So it's going to talk to us about all the fundamentals. Who is Allah? Who is the Prophet? What are the pillars of Iman? What are the angels, the scriptures, and all of this stuff, the qadr of Allah, the day of judgment, all of that is mentioned here. So that's at least a bit of background of what this hadith entails. So now let's just look at the hadith itself. عن عمر رضي الله عنه قال بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So let's all read this together, okay? We'll do just about 3 sentences and then we'll pause, okay? So everyone after me. عن عمر رضي الله عنه قال بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Very good. ذات يوم إذ طلع علينا رجل شديد بياض الثياب شديد سواد الشعر Pause. Okay, let's look at the translation. Every sentence is a moment to pause and extract a few lessons. We all know who Umar radiallahu anhu is, so we're done with at least the narrator. One day while we were sitting with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, I get this question every now and then when I teach this hadith. What were the Sahabas doing when they were sitting with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? What were they doing? The hadith doesn't mention anything. However, scholars do tell us some of the habits of companions. There are moments throughout the day. So after Fajr was a really important one. After Asr and even after Isha, these 3 periods of the day, the Prophet ﷺ would always allocate some time to the companions to answer their questions. If they had dreams, to interpret those dreams and give guidance. If there was problems, somebody suffering, somebody needed money, etc., just the affairs of the community, and he would address it. So perhaps it is very likely that something similar is happening here. Or this was a class. It was like a halaqah. So Prophet ﷺ is literally there educating and teaching some aspect of the religion. So the point here is, when they say they were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, here's the whole point of this. Never ever do the companions sit with him, alayhi salatu wasalam, and just chill. You understand? You're just sitting there. They're like, yo, it's a hot day. None of that. It's always a moment to ask something or to benefit something or to learn something or to perfect something. There's always benefit. And the scholars today tell us that one of the most effective ways for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless your time is that you utilize the small moments of space or gap that you have throughout the day for something beneficial. Let me give you a simple example. Make it a habit, if you don't do this, that when you go out with your family to dinner at any restaurant, you make the order. You're sitting at the table now and you're just waiting for your order to arrive. Just try it. You'll be surprised, subhanallah, what, members of your family or friends and so on, what they would process and think and share with you at the moment when you ask them, tell me something beneficial, something I can learn. Tell me like a really nice statement of something. And you'll be surprised, subhanallah. Yesterday I heard this thing. Yesterday I was watching TV and this beautiful quote came up. And just do this, okay? You, your son, your daughter, kids, husband, whatever the case is. And if you make this a habit, this is how you gradually, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts putting barakah in your time. So the moments in your day that you feel like you can't accomplish anything end up being the most blessed moments of your day, just because of this one change. So little things like that. So all of these companions are sitting with him, alayhi salatu wasalam, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there appeared before us a man. Pause. When they say they appeared before us a man, it means that the companions are not naive to their surroundings, which is part of the responsibility of a Muslim. You never go anywhere, even places that you're comfortable with, that you're accustomed to, and the Muslim is always aware. They're always, that doesn't mean you have to be like a security, agent or a soldier constantly monitoring your surroundings. And no, you're just aware. A Muslim does that. They're not naive. They don't just, I'm just minding my own business. Muslims don't do that when it comes to protecting themselves, protecting their faith and their family. Okay, all of these things are part of our faith. So the fact that it's highlighted, that we looked at a direction and we saw a man coming, this wasn't just some random thing. They know there's always people coming into Medina, going out of Medina. But this one individual stood out. Why? Look at it. There appeared before us a man whose clothing were exceedingly white and whose hair was exceedingly black. What is the first two things the companions notice about this individual? Okay, so and what do you call all of that? Without talking to him, without knowing who he is, what was the first thing that caught their attention? His attire, his clothing. What do you learn from that? Clothing and how you and I choose to dress and clothe ourselves, the attire you choose, it matters. And it is an extension of your iman. So if somebody decides to just wear like, oh, I'm just going to the masjid, so I'll just wear like, my oldest sweater. It's only got like 17 holes on it, but it's fine. It still covers me. No. It's all, you see, one of the things about this religion is that everything matters. So combing your hair, grooming yourself, good hygiene, using just the basic, things that we do, like you iron, you wash your clothes regularly, and you genuinely try to dress and conduct yourself like a mature Muslim that represents their deen. So that none of this is saying, okay, you got to just wear like a thobe everywhere you go. You got to wear a shirt and tie even when you're going to the gym. None of that. What we're saying though here is the fact that that is the first thing that's being highlighted in the most important hadith in the Sunnah. The first sentence is he was wearing white and he had really, really awesome hair. That's not just something to zoom over. So the lesson here is our Prophet ﷺ told us in another narration, at-tuhur shatrul iman, that being clean and pure and constantly monitoring your overall presence, your clothing, your hygiene is an extension of your iman. In other words, you have weak iman if you don't take care of your hygiene and dress appropriately as a Muslim. It is a sign of weak faith. So that's really important. Now, my one more question to you guys is why? Why does Islam care so much if I ironed my clothes or I didn't? If I wear something dirty and one day, why does Islam care this much? And believe it or not, like especially students that are new to this, they immediately get the impression of how picky, this is the words that they would describe, like how picky Islam is. It's always picking on all these little things. I just want to dress what I'm comfortable in. I'm comfortable in wearing my pajamas at the wedding. Like, just random thing. This is the way I like to dress. What do you say to that? Why does Islam care about your appearance? وَثِيَابَكَ. Okay. So you see, you have ayat that highlight, the cleanliness and the beauty of the clothing, but you don't even have to go that far. Who is the example of Islam for us? Tell me one story or narration you've ever read that the Prophet ﷺ was untidy. Amazing. Tell me a moment where anybody complained about anything about him ﷺ in terms of hygiene. It was the opposite. The Prophet ﷺ, everything about him was blessed. Sometimes the Sahabas, and you were allowed to do this with the Prophet, not to anybody today, but you were allowed to touch him and get barakah from him. So if he would sweat, you were allowed to touch it and rub it all over you, and it became medicine. It would cure you. Even the saliva of the Prophet ﷺ, there are narrations that sometimes if he would just spit on the floor, a companion would come and pick that up because it had a fragrance sweeter than musk, and it was used as medicine. His wife Salama radiallahu anha narrates a beautiful moment where she said, one day the Prophet ﷺ came over to my house. It was after Dhuhr. After Dhuhr in the desert is the hottest time of the day. So you don't want to be outdoors, you need to get indoors, okay? So he comes into her house, alayhi salatu wasalam. She spreads a piece of leather on the floor, and Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam takes a rest. When he wakes up, she notices, because leather is impermeable, so she notices that there's a pool of his sweat and his perspiration sitting there on the leather. What do you think she did with it? She went and got a bottle that she had some perfume of her own in. She emptied it all, threw it away. And she gathered that sweat and poured it into her perfume bottle and used it for the rest of her life. So when it boils down to it, the example we get from him, alayhi salatu wasalam, companions described when we looked at his face just looked more beautiful than a full moon. There are narrations that some companions did not have the strength to look at him, because when they did, they were fixated at him. Like he was just that beautiful. All of this is not only because he is a prophet of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ also narrates, his wife Aisha radiallahu anha narrates, the Prophet ﷺ loved to use his right hand to dress, to comb and groom himself. And when he was eating, he would use his right. And anything in general that was good, always preferred to use his right hand. You put all of this together, what is the purpose then? So let's just finish this part and move on. So you've heard all of these things I've mentioned to you about clothing and appearance and so on. What is in it for us if we follow these guidelines? We dress well, we have good eyes, all of these things. What's in it for us? Mm-hmm. If it wasn't a hardship on the ummah, I would have ordered every believer that before salah and before their wudu, two narrations, to use the siwak. Students, if you don't have one of these, fear Allah and get one. This here is a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This. It is an absolute miracle. And when you allow yourself to get accustomed to it, you will become so addicted that wallahi, you would feel like you didn't shower for the day because you didn't have one of these. And you did shower. But this brings a sense of comfort and freshness to not just, when you use it in your mouth, but just overall the feeling of and confidence and all of these little things. So much to the extent that some of the scholars say that if you want to improve your memory and hifz of the Quran, use a siwak. So there are studies that the siwak also helps to improve your memory. It naturally gives you good hygiene. If there are cavities and other problems, all of these things can also be addressed just by using this. I actually taught a 2-day course, 10 hours a day just on the siwak. Like the research I did on this thing, it blew me away. And if you don't have one, you are not allowed to return to this class until you show me one before you enter next week, okay? That is the entrance fee if you would like. You present a siwak at the door, tfaddal. You should. So in conclusion, what is in it for us that we care so much about our appearance? Well, it's very simple, students. You know how they say actions speak louder than? That's your da'wah to the planet, and you don't even say a single letter. That's it. Unfortunately, subhanallah, Allahul Musta'an, Allah help us, but unfortunately, as a Muslim culture, we don't have that reputation of being those who are clean, present a good hygiene. You ever see what we do with bathrooms? You ever see what we do with sinks and wudu areas? You ever see how when we finish eating in a room or a cafeteria, something you ever see? It looked like the Battle of Uhud just happened, It's just really unfortunate. Really, really unfortunate. So don't take this for granted. Let's just take one more sentence and then we pause, inshallah. I'll give you guys some time to go downstairs as well. Whose hair was exceedingly white and whose hair was, his clothing was exceedingly white and his hair was exceedingly black. You know something? I'll pause there because there's one more thing I think is really important to highlight. This individual was wearing white. Tell me something about white clothing. Say it again. It's easy to get dirty, yes. Tell me something Islamic about white clothing. It symbolizes purity, okay. What if you don't like it though? It's like not your favorite color. Does that mean that you don't like being pure? Tell me something, but you're absolutely right. It is a symbol of purity. And how? What's the significance of white? What is the color the Prophet ﷺ loved the most? On Jum'ah day, on Eid day, on any special occasion, when he went to a wedding, when he went to a celebration, white, white, white. It is the sunnah and an authentic sunnah to wear white. Does it have to be a white thobe or just white clothing? Yeah, just white clothing. It doesn't have to be a white thobe. Like this is not an Islamic dress, right? It's not Islamic attire. So, but it happened to become part of the culture. But the point is that white was his favorite color to wear. He mostly wore white even throughout the day. And as you rightfully said, it is a symbol of purity. It is a symbol of faith as well. Not only Islam has this, okay? All major religions also have this as part of their religion. So the color also matters. What other colors did the Prophet ﷺ wear? What other colors did he have? Green, keep going. Black, red. There's even some narrations that he wore green turban. Yeah. There were times that he wore that. Red. I thought that we weren't allowed to wear red. You guys, haven't you heard that, like, you have never read anything that the Prophet ﷺ warned a companion not to wear this color? He saw a companion wearing a bright red color. At least that's what the narration describes. You know, ahmar is the Arabic word for red. So whether it's red closer to another color, Allah knows. But it says red, it's red. And the Prophet ﷺ ordered not to do that. He forbade his companions to wear it. Let me tell you, there was a gift sent to him from Yemen to the Prophet ﷺ. It was a cloak. It was red, and he wore it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what's happening here? You don't wear red, but this is a gift. I'm going to wear it. No, like, well, what's the ruling? You know why I throw these random fiqh questions to you? These are things that unfortunately the average Muslim really confuses. We do have occasionally from time to time the haram clothing police that come around. You're wearing this haram color. This is the color of shaitan's color of Jahannam. Subhanallah. Wearing red in and of itself, the color, is not what's being prohibited. What is meant by the Prophet ﷺ prohibiting this companion of wearing red, meaning that the majority of his attire was red. But if you have red shoes, red laces, a red shirt, a red jacket, a red hat, but everything else is a different color, that is not what the hadith is in reference to. You see the difference? So the color matters as well. Whose hair was exceedingly black? Yes, the Prophet ﷺ also occasionally, especially in battle and in war, he wore black. His hair was exceedingly black. The only thing I will say to you about this is that because back then living in a desert, your hair is naturally and constantly untidy. Okay, it's filled with sand, wind is blowing constantly. It's really hard to maintain. This man came with perfect hair. I wanted to ask you guys about this color black and ask you guys, is it permissible for a Muslim, especially a Muslim man, to dye his hair black? Yes, tell me why.
For the purpose of looking strong. It's not a general scenario, but for some people, in some cases, they want to look strong, not like old and weak. Say, just for a soldier, he wants to look strong. He wants to make sure that he's giving the impression that he's strong. In that case,
What? Okay. So the brother said it presents a more youthful look, that you're stronger, younger, etc. Right? What if you just hate white hair and you just wanna dye dye it brown? Okay. Prophet ﷺ dyed it red. Sometimes it was an orange color. But go back to my question. What if I just want to dye my hair black just because, oh my God, I got a whole forest of white hair growing and I just need to color it? Am I allowed to do that? It is disliked to do this because the Prophet ﷺ himself never dyed any part of him black. But there are other shades of color, a dark brown, an orange. Some of the companions described even that it looked reddish in their eyes. So one companion would look and another would both look at the same color and give a different description. So somewhere in between. But when it comes to black, this was a specific prohibition of a particular group at that time, that part of their symbol of their faith and what they worshipped was that you maintain every part of you, every facial hair, mustache, everything black, and it has to be pitch black. So the Prophet ﷺ is not prohibiting in general, but the scholars still considered what he advised one of the companions about this particular group. Don't just throw that out the window. I consider that perhaps maybe he didn't like it, alayhi salatu wasalam. So it's disliked for you to do that, but however, it is sunnah that if you have grays, to dye it. This is part of the sunnah as well. If you have grays, that you dye it, that you color it. And believe me, if this sunnah didn't exist, a lot of you would not recognize me right now, okay? You would think, is this his dad here today? Like, who is this person? Okay? So, we'll leave it at that, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا, and we will continue next week, inshallah. Okay, guys? Assalamu alaikum.